News coming out of the Middle East, where civil war continues to rage in Syria. The Russians are reporting that one of its military planes has been accidentally shot down by Syrian government forces, but Russia is laying the blame on Israel. 15 Russian personnel have been killed. Basically, as I understand it, the Israeli Air Force was targeting facilities in the Latakia area. The Russians are accusing Israel of using their surveillance plane as cover, putting it in harm's way, with Syrian air defense forces doing the damage. As far as what they were targeting on the ground, the Israeli military, they've refused to comment, which is not unusual. Speculation, given what the Israelis have been striking at in the last 18 months, could well be Iranian military targets. Yeah. So in a phone call today, apparently, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu told his counterpart in Israel that Russia is pinning the blame on them, and that Russia, quote, reserves the right to take further steps in response, unquote. The Israelis have been sharing information with the Russians, but on this occasion, the warning given by Israel that a military operation was imminent was, I guess, insufficient. It's being labelled as irresponsible action anyway. The Russians are very angry, as you'd expect, but as BBC analyst Jonathan Marcus pointed out, even though the Russians can't publicly be seen to be casting the blame on Syria for this accident, privately, well, it might well be a different story. We don't know. I was going over some startling numbers earlier, put out by the Russian Defense Ministry. Since the Russian Federation entered the Syria conflict in 2015, its military has reportedly destroyed over 120,000 so-called terrorist targets and 86,000 so-called militants have been killed in their airstrikes. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is a group based here in the United Kingdom, they're saying that almost 8,000 civilians and more than 10,000 combatants have perished in Syria in Russian airstrikes. Also in Syria, again involving Russia, a deal with Turkey has taken place to form a demilitarized zone in the Idlib region. And this agreement is said to come into force by October the 15th and will be reportedly 15 to 25 kilometers wide. Both Russian and Turkish troops will patrol this area. Obviously, Russia is supporting Syrian government forces while Turkey backs the rebels, as does the US. The US and Turkey, NATO allies, of course. Putin is saying the rebels need to pull their heavy weaponry out of this new buffer zone by the 10th of October, and jihadist groups have to get out of there entirely. Now, the Turks don't want another refugee humanitarian nightmare crisis on their southern border. No. The Syrian army, well, what they want to retake the area. An all-out assault on Idlib on the city, Idlib city, could be a bloodbath, as many have warned, including Turkish President Erdogan. The Iranians have hailed this agreement for what it's worth. So, Putin wants what he is calling radical fighters to withdraw from the area. Russia talks about fighting terrorism, as do their Syrian clients, but it's often been the case that both Russian and Syrian forces have attacked groups and fighters who the West regards as legit rebel fighters in this civil war, which has been raging for more than 7 years now. For a tyrant like Bashar al-Assad, is it not the case that all armed opposition would be regarded as terrorists, right? In his worldview. But I'm to understand that Russia and Turkey will decide together, co-designate, if you will label together the radical groups. So there it is. Whether this works out or not, we'll have to wait and see. I've said it before though, said it years ago in fact, the international community has seriously dropped the ball when it comes to Syria. And I still don't see how this conflict will end. I don't see the end in sight.